Thank you, Carol. Thank you. IP, intellectual property. That did not work. Click here. No. Click here. Yes, great. So, I'm not a lawyer. This isn't legal advice, and if you think you might need legal advice, then, thank you. If you think you need legal advice, then you definitely do need legal advice. Don't ask me, I'm not a lawyer. I only wrote this presentation because I wanted to better understand this topic, so I just did some internet searches and came to some conclusions, and maybe they're wrong. Hopefully they're not wrong. Got it. Yes, my name's Jonas Sullivan, Canberra, Australia. I work at Geoscience Australia, but I'm here on behalf of AusGeo Oceania, the regional chapter of AusGeo, and I do recommend that you meet your regional or local chapter and just see what's going on. So what are we going to talk about today? It's boring, but it's also important, and that EU Cyber Resilience Act is one reason why it's important. Why should you care? What are we even talking about? How do I do the thing? And then what's next? So first is, why did I do this? It's just because I wanted to learn about it. And then I saw on some message boards, I saw this EU CRA, and people were getting rather upset about this. It's a good idea. The European Union has some regulations to make open source, make all software work better. They want to improve the security and facilitate compliance, and these are all very good ideas. But it's not just like some ideas. You also have obligations. You have to document your cybersecurity risk. You have to report your exploits upstream and downstream. You have to have a plan. Like, why would you do this? This sounds like a lot of work. And also security updates to be made available for at least 5 years. Is that me? I just wrote a Python script. Do I have to support it for 5 years? This sounds like a threat now, right? So what were the reactions? The Linux Foundation in Europe, they originally said that it inadvertently risks posing a major burden. And yeah, that is a major burden. Drupal and Joomla and Typo3 and WordPress, they're all sort of allied. And they had some real problems. It seems like they have some lawyers, because they had some problems with some terminology. Like, what does commercial activity mean? And what does unfinished software mean? This was in the plans. So it was really problematic. LibreOffice, everybody loves LibreOffice, but they brought up a whole other point. What if it's not their software that has the security vulnerabilities, but the files that their software reads? Now whose problem is it? I don't know. The Python Software Foundation, they also thought that this was going to be really problematic because it could unintentionally harm the users they're actually trying to protect. So, like, this is an EU thing. We're not in the EU. Why should I even care about this? Let's have a look at QGIS as the use case. We already know what QGIS is. I originally wrote this for a Python user group. But which country's laws should apply to QGIS? Well, let's have a look. Where did the commits come from? Basically one guy. He's here today. So he's Australian. His commits come from Australia, so it's Australian software, right? No, that's not the case at all. It's run under the open source Geospatial Foundation, AusGeo, which is registered in America as a 501c4 whatever. And so now it turns out that it's American software. So again, these EU regulations, they don't apply, right? Well, it turns out if you want to have users in the EU, then they do apply. So in some backroom Slack chat channels, I saw some people saying, well, why don't we just say you can't use it in the EU? That's a good solution, right? But that's not really a solution. That's just trying to get around the problem. The actual solution was to work with the EU, work with the regulator. And they did. And this is a real success story because they introduced the open source steward, a whole new concept, a new economic concept. And this here, it was adopted last year. So this is no longer a proposal. This is now regulation, and it's actually happening. It's new. What does open source steward mean? Not really sure. The courts haven't tested it, so we'll find out. What is it supposed to mean? It's supposed to mean the open source steward isn't a manufacturer. Instead, they support products with digital elements. That just means software. Yeah, so you just need to have a cybersecurity policy. You need to cooperate with the market surveillance authorities. You need to report on exploits. This is good ideas. This is all very good ideas, right? We should be doing this anyway. We probably were doing this anyway, but this is just formalizing these arrangements. So, getting a bit into the weeds, what is actually regulated? The CRA doesn't apply to contributors like me or Niall Dawson. It doesn't apply to them. They don't have personal liability. The organization does. The CRA only applies if the open source software is supplied for distribution in the course of a commercial activity. There's some words on here, but it's still problematic because we're not really sure. It hasn't been tested by the courts yet. So hopefully QGIS is not commercial, but if QGIS does fundraising and they collect more donations than are required to fund their operations, now it's a commercial activity. So do we need to get accountants and lawyers involved? I don't know. So what was the response to this new evolution? The Python Software Foundation was like, great. Thanks for acknowledging that open source software is different. It's fundamentally different from commercial software. And also, there's now more distinct, clear distinction between development and supply phases. So there's been some clarity, and it's a good news story because the EU has been working with users and with these organizations and did make changes to the regulations to include open source software in their systems. What did OSGeo say? You can go, most of these slides have some references at the bottom. If you're a real nerd, you can look into all of these things. Again, it's all stuff that's pretty much already been done. There's software bill of materials is new, something new that showed up, and that's sort of like your requirements.txt. What packages are you importing or using in your software? So,
and what those packages are.
Yeah, downstream and upstream. And that was already done. Maybe it wasn't called the software bill of materials, but it was already done. But this is just formalizing it. So it seems a lot less scary now. So why do we need to do this? What's the threat? Well, protestware is a threat. So NPM had colors and faker. That was broken, and it was because this guy, Marek, said, I don't like how my software is being used, so I'm going to insert a bunch of bullshit in my package, and it's going to start just shitting all over your console logs, and the packages are broken now. So whose problem is this? Is it Marek's problem? Is it the downstream user's problem? Protestware is everybody's problem. Crypto miners, another big problem. It turns out that some mainstream sort of packages have had crypto miners installed. And, you know, people generally do a great job at sanitizing this sort of thing, but it still slips through. So now whose problem is it? Yeah, what are we even going to do about this stuff? I'm going to take a step down into the weeds, further into the weeds. and talk about copyright and licensing. So what is copyright? Copyright is by default. So as soon as something leaves your mind and becomes outside of you on paper, on your screen, you've expressed yourself somehow, it's inherently copywritten. You don't have to declare copyright.
Is that in all countries?
That's in most countries. I only know about Australia and America because America has the easiest copyright system to use, and I live in Australia. So copyright provides some legal protection, but it doesn't protect what's in your head. It has to be expressed somehow, then it can have copyright protection. And also, doesn't usually protect really common things like names and titles. They're not really original enough. That's some lawyer stuff. So this is the US. They've said for the past almost 40 years, copyright is inherent. You don't have to declare it. But you can. You can say it's copywritten, and there's a few good reasons for it. You can put a notice on your software, and then people know that there is copyright, and they can't make an innocent infringement defense, which is where you say, oh, I didn't know. Yeah, sorry, mate. Well, you wrote it on there, so you should know. It also allows people to seek permission. They might want to use it and get your permission. And if there does come a time when you have to call a lawyer, it identifies when you copywrote it. And also, there's orphan works. And if you can't figure out who does have copyright, maybe nobody can use it. At least the lawyer is going to say nobody can use it. That was copyright. This is patents. So in Australia, you can't really copyright, or you can't really patent software in Australia, because it turns out that your software probably just performs known functions, like addition and subtraction. You probably haven't made a new function that works at the operating system level. So you can't patent it. Maybe you can in America. Their systems are a bit more industry friendly. And I think that's why most software companies are incorporated in America. Trademarks, why don't we put a TM on there? It turns out trademark is not really what we're talking about. You can see in bold the sort of things that might be trademarked, like a color or a sound or a smell. We're probably not packaging that with our software.
There is trademark 42, right?
Yeah, if you have a logo, you can trademark your logo.
The trademark 42 covers computer services, which
Whew.
more software trademarks.
So software license, we talked about copyright, trademark, software license. This is a whole other legal concept. This is permission. So this isn't removing people's ability to use or read your software. It's giving permission. And an important concept here is copyright, copyleft. Copyright is exclusive rights saying, this is mine. Copyleft is granting rights. And there's a whole scale of freedoms. Freedom 0, I would like to run the program. Freedom 1, I want to see the source code. Freedom 2, I want to redistribute the source code. And finally, freedom 3 is, I want the source code, I'm going to make changes, and then redistribute. And so this is copyright down to copyleft. Finally, how do I choose which license to use? Yeah, just pick one. So this is from the opensource.org set of licenses. There's 114 there. And I've put in bold a few that you might have seen before. You might have seen all of them if you're a lawyer. The BSD2, BSD3, MIT, really popular, LGPL. These are the ones that have the short codes on GitHub. You can see the short codes are in bold. But again, this is a couple dozen. So like, how do you choose? There's this website, choosealicense.com. And I thought, great, finally I can get like a click-through flow chart of which license to choose. Unfortunately, this website is literally just this graphic. It's that simple. I want to work in a community. The community is OSGeo or QGIS or one particular package. What license do they use? Use the same one. If you're working on your own and you're not collaborating, MIT license is great. And if you would like to collaborate, GPL3 is great. So it's not a hard choice, but do make a choice. These are some things you might want to consider if you want to maybe sell your software in the future, or maybe you'd like to let other people sell it, or maybe they could even repackage it into their software and then sell it. This can get complicated. And like I said, I'm not a lawyer, and if these questions you don't know the answer to, just talk to a lawyer. They're not that expensive. What about no license? Thanks. What about no license? Like, why even do all this stuff? I did mention the orphaned work thing, which is like, well, I found this thing, but I don't know who to credit or whether I can use it. It's an orphaned work. No lawyer is going to say, go ahead. So you definitely should apply a license. But even if you don't, if you put your source code in GitHub, you accepted their terms of service, and their terms of service say you have just applied a license. So it's really hard to not have a license. You might want to add a copyright notice, and a statement says, I am intentionally not offering any license, or I'm doing copyleft or something like this. But no license is a bad idea. This is kind of an old concept, but I just wanted to cover it really quickly. Contributor license agreements. Back in the 90s when we were sharing software on 3.5-inch discs, sometimes there was a list of names and like who contributed to it. And like that's the individual contributor license agreement. And it was nice that you got to see your name in the software, but it's really become a problem because now you have a whole bunch of people and they have different, sometimes they're corporations, and it gets really messy and really hard to maintain this list of people, and it's just a bad idea. So the advice is literally don't do that. There's this guy named Cameron Shorter, and he helped organize the 2009 FOSS4G in Sydney, and he hates these. He gets like fully angry. He writes blog posts about it and everything. Yeah, also it's legal voodoo. Like lawyers say, just please don't do that. And in bold there, you can see inbound equals outbound license terms. If you read the GitHub terms of service, which literally no one's ever done, it's in there. So if I write some code on my computer and I click pull request and it gets accepted, if I had written this piece that I wrote right here is LGPL, and it's going into an MIT package, it's now in MIT. So it's just inherited what the package you've contributed to. That's what the inbound equals outbound means. So you can't say the part I've written has a different license. So individual contributor licenses is kind of dumb anyway, because it's not like the individuals can have different rights. This is just saying the same thing but longer. So yeah, don't do it. It also creates a click agree culture. I'm not saying read the end user license agreement all the time, but the click agree culture is a problem. So yeah, I'm just going to skip that. How do I do it? Yeah, they try and make it easy for you. You can use a license.txt or Markdown or whatever. If you're using the GitHub or GitLab or any other website, you can just pull a drop down and they'll have a list there, and you can just pick the one that your community uses or the software package that you're contributing to. You can also put it in your source code. You can put a little section at the top that says copyright my name or my company and year, and it has licensed. It doesn't have to be long, that's one line. And you can just put that in every single source code file. So I've learned a lot writing this presentation. Who cares? What's next? This is the QGIS licensing challenge. And this was published earlier this year, I think, by Mr. Marco sitting just here. I'm not just going to skip your last name. I was trying to figure out how to pronounce it, but I'm too American. The problem is 2004, There was a Qt library version, and now because of some decisions that were made 15, 20 years ago, we're not really sure what to do. And if this sort of thing is interesting to you, please talk to Marco and Anita and Tim Sutton, because they're looking for a path forward. So we have time for questions. Anybody have questions? Oh.
I did a similar presentation. I have a very similar, or the same understanding of copyright and licenses, which is great to have it reiterated. With the Open Data Cube, I stepped through the process of onboarding that software project, or it's like a group of projects, into being an OSGeo community project. And I always understood that being a full OSGeo project almost needed something like line-by-line understanding of copyright, ownership of code, that's the copyright part, which is what I thought a contributor license agreement handled. And then there's the actual licensing of the code afterwards. So the licensing of the entire code base is easy, but attributing who wrote which part and who owns copyright, I thought was one of those hard problems that big mature projects need to do. And I'd be interested in your take on that, and maybe others.
So copyright is like fungible, like it can be exchanged. And copyright can be owned by OSGeo, which is a corporate entity with legal status. So when you contribute, you can say, this is my copyright, or you can say, this is part of a project which has copyright owned by OSGeo. Or
what a CLA would do?
Contributor license agreement, yeah, maybe. But CLA just is problematic, just because it's hard to maintain.
It's actually pretty easy to maintain.
You can fully automate it, and we actually have, if you want to do a commit on our project, you actually have to first agree to that contributor license agreement, and then you're done once and for all.
Yeah, great. I'm learning a lot.
Which brings advantages as well.
Yeah.
Because you listed before how many people are developing QGIS. Now, maybe somebody stops working on QGIS, and with CLA, which we unfortunately do not have in QGIS, if we don't reach that person anymore, and we would like to do some changes, we are actually stuck. Advantage of CLA is actually that the developers are giving away their own copyright to an entity that manages it for them. So with GeoServer, if you commit to GeoServer, it's not your commit, it's GeoServer's commit. Whereas if you commit to QGIS, it's your commit. And if I want to do some work on the license, for example, I want to suggest to take away GPL and try to have people kill me, but let's assume that for a second. If I want to do that, now I need to reach out to every single developer that has been doing any line of code that is still present in the code base of QGIS. Because they own the copyright. And that is what VLC did when they were not allowed to be published on an app store. And the guy went 2 years long searching for people to get authorization to make an exception. So CLA is maybe a little bit tricky, but it brings advantages as well. Say it from a project that doesn't have one.
It is not completely true that they check the copyright of every line of code, but they check that every line of code is following the same license of the software. It happened, I don't remember, for one software that there was some part of code that it was not completely compliant with the license. It took a lot of time to be accepted. But yeah, they have just to check that the code is completely free and open source.
Yeah, thanks. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, I was just gonna make a comment about the trademarks and logos and stuff. So I've been looking to, establish a trademark for something, a software in Australia, and I went and looked up the things. And if you write software and you want to have a logo and sell merch, it's a good idea to trademark it so that Redbubble wannabes don't create copies of your merch. It doesn't cost that much, and especially for software fundraisers and merch selling, it's a good idea. 42 trademark in Australia gives you a trademark for computer things.
So the trademark is for the logo, not the computer code. Nice. It's only for the region where it's registered, not the whole Earth. Any other comments or questions? Oh, in the back.
I want to mention something regarding the contributor license agreement. There are also risks because I saw positive examples. For example, this year we tried to contribute upstream to a CNCF, so Cloud Native, I think, Compute Foundation or something like that, managed the open source project. In order to be allowed to commit the functionality, we had to give up our rights. But in order to be able to do that, we had to pay lots of money to the Linux Software Foundation in order to get an account which is allowed to do that. And the reality is that it's cheap for an individual user, but for example, as an academic, for me it's difficult to separate what is from public money and what is from my private time. And basically it's associated with the university, which has to pay a few $1,000s in order to be member or affiliate with CNCF or Linux Software Foundation. So it seems a good idea, but at one point it favors only contribution from companies. So this is something that I felt on my own this year.
Sorry I brought this up, guys. It's important, right? And I'm glad we're able to share our experiences.
I'm going to change subject. CRA. You mentioned the steward, the open source steward. That's really cool for OSGeo and for the QGIS project. It's not that cool for companies that are developing because it doesn't apply to a company. Nyal doing work as Nyal in the night, yes. Nyal doing work as North Road, no. So it's still a very, very tricky thing, and it applies to anything that goes into Europe, so globally. Thanks a lot for taking up this.
Yeah, I learned a lot in writing the presentation and from the crowd here. And I reckon if you want to know more about a thing, force yourself to make a presentation.
Great job. Thank you, Jonah.